This is a clear violation of the HOA bylaws, and you know—
Sunlight glared off the letter as I unfolded it. $250,000 in violations, each word dripping with arrogance, neighbors whispered, the HOA board smirking as if they'd buried me for good. But what they didn't know was that the land beneath every single one of their homes already belonged to me. It began like most things with our HOA. Not with a conversation, but with a letter. Thick paper, embossed seal, courier delivered so the whole neighborhood could see me sign for it. I remember the way Mrs. Hargrove, the HOA president, watched from across the cul-de-sac, her pearls catching the sunlight as if she were attending a victory parade. I tore it open on the porch. My hands were steady, but my stomach already knew. Violation 1. Unapproved garage modifications. Fine, $50,000. Violation 2. Landscaping out of compliance. Fine, $75,000. Violation 3. Unauthorized vehicles. Fine, $25,000. And so it went, page after page, until the total screamed back at me. $250,000. Neighbors began drifting out, pretending to water lawns or check mail. They weren't there for chores. They were there to see the show. The HOA had finally gone for the jugular. Jason, my teenage son, came outside with his robotics project half finished in his hands. Dad, what's wrong? I forced a smile I didn't feel. Paperwork, buddy. From the corner of my eye, I saw Mr. Chen from next door, usually polite, shake his head sympathetically. But even sympathy stung. Because sympathy meant everyone believed the HOA could actually do this. That their rules, their fines, their arrogance were bigger than me. Inside, I spread the letter on the dining table. The ink shone under the chandelier. Signatures stacked like daggers. They wanted me humiliated, maybe even bankrupted. I'd been quiet too long, and they mistook silence for weakness. But they had made one mistake. They thought land was about fences and lawns. They'd forgotten what sat under their manicured gardens and neatly paved driveways. I pulled out my own folder, older than Jason, yellowed at the edges, stamped with county seals, deeds, surveys, transfer records, the quiet history of Maple Grove before it became a community. The truth? The HOA owned nothing. They managed nothing. All their houses, every cul-de-sac, every swing set and sidewalk. It was all built on land that still bore my family's name. Land they leased. Land I had let them forget. Until now. That night, Jason sat across from me as I explained. His eyes widened as he traced the deeds with his fingers. Wait, you mean technically all of this? He gestured toward the window, toward the glowing porch lights across the street. Belongs to us? I nodded slowly. They live here. They own walls and roofs. But the dirt under it, the title beneath it, and that's ours. And they just handed me a reason to remind them. He leaned back, half shocked, half grinning. So, what happens now? I looked at the letter again. The $250,000 wasn't just a number. It was a trigger. They'd fired it without knowing where the bullet would land. They wanted a war, I said quietly. Now they're going to get one. In broad daylight. Outside, the HOA board gathered in Mrs. Hargrove's driveway. Glasses of wine clinking, laughter carrying across the night like a victory song. They thought the letter was the end of my story, but it was just the beginning. The first signature they forged against me would soon be the very evidence that unraveled their empire and reminded everyone whose land they were really standing on. The morning after the letter arrived, the cul-de-sac was buzzing. It always amazed me how fast news traveled here. The HOA didn't need an email list. Gossip was their wireless network. As I walked out to grab coffee, I felt eyes on me from every porch. Some looks were smug, others pitying, but none neutral. They all knew about the $250,000 fine. That was the point. The HOA had weaponized humiliation. Mrs. Hargrove, president of the board, was already outside in her pearls and pressed blazer, clipboard tucked under her arm like a general's saber. She spotted me and smiled. Not the warm kind. The kind that says, "Checkmate, morning," she called, as if we were old friends. "I trust you received our notice?" I raised the cup in my hand. Received. Read. Not impressed. Her smile faltered for half a beat before hardening again. "Well, whether you're impressed or not, it stands. You violated nearly every covenant in the book." The board voted unanimously. Behind her, 3 other board members shifted on their feet. Mr. Lawson, the treasurer, pretended to check his phone. Mrs. Green adjusted her sunglasses. They looked confident, but their body language betrayed nerves. I took a step closer, lowering my voice so only they could hear. "You may have voted, but you don't get the final say. The county does. The courts do. And unfortunately for you, so do I." Confusion flickered in her eyes, quickly masked. "What are you implying?" "Just this," I said evenly. "You're fining me for violations on land you don't own." That afternoon, I went to the county clerk's office. Jason insisted on coming, clutching the folder of deeds like it was treasure. His curiosity was burning, and I wasn't about to dim it. The clerk, an older man with glasses perched at the edge of his nose, studied the papers for a long while. Then he looked up, eyebrows raised. You're telling me they fined you for property violations here? He tapped the file. I nodded. He let out a low whistle. Son, these deeds haven't changed hands in over 70 years. The HOA doesn't have a legal leg to stand on if they're trying to claim authority over all this. He gestured at the neighborhood map. Jason leaned closer. So technically, all their houses are on our land? The clerk chuckled. Technically? No, legally. Yes. I thanked him and left, Jason practically bouncing beside me. Dad, this is huge. We will, I interrupted gently. But not out of spite, out of necessity. They've pushed too far. By the time we returned, the HOA had already called for an emergency meeting. They loved that phrase. It made backyard politics feel like world crises. Folding chairs sprouted like weeds on Mrs. Hargrove's lawn. Neighbors gathered, whispering, sipping lemonade, waiting for the spectacle. I arrived with Jason and my folder, Harris and Ramirez. Old family friends and veterans who had been mentoring Jason joined me, standing quietly at the edge. Their presence alone was enough to make the crowd uneasy. Calm authority has a way of silencing even the loudest gossip. Mrs. Hargrove took the makeshift podium, clearing her throat dramatically. Thank you all for coming. As you know, Mr. Walker has flagrantly disregarded our community standards. The board has levied fines totaling $250,000. If unpaid, we will pursue liens and foreclosure. Gasps rippled through the crowd. That was the dagger, the word foreclosure. She wanted fear to finish what paper started. I waited until the murmurs died down. Then I stepped forward. Funny thing about foreclosure, Mrs. Hargrove. It assumes you own the ground beneath your feet. Do you? Her smile twitched. Of course. Every homeowner here. No, I cut in, pulling out the deeds. I raised them high so sunlight glinted off the embossed seals. You own the walls, the paint, the shingles. But this, I tapped the document, this land belongs to me. Every cul-de-sac, every lawn, every driveway. You've been living here by lease. A lease that my family has held for generations. The crowd erupted. Some neighbors leaned forward, eyes wide. Others shook their heads, muttering disbelief. Mrs. Green hissed. He's bluffing. Jason opened the folder and held out one of the deeds to the nearest neighbor. Not bluffing. These are county-stamped records. The neighbor's face drained of color as he read. It's true, he whispered. The board stammered, trying to recover. Mr. Lawson stepped forward. Even if you own the land, that doesn't exempt you from HOA rules. Maybe not, I said, but it does exempt me from your fines. You can't penalize a landlord on his own property, and you certainly can't threaten foreclosure on land you don't control. The murmurs grew louder. Phones came out, snapping pictures, recording video. The board had wanted public humiliation. Now they were drowning in it. Mrs. Hargrove slammed her clipboard shut. This is outrageous. We'll take this to court. Please do, I replied calmly, because in court, forgery and fraud carry heavier fines than $250,000. And I've kept every letter you've sent, every threat, every false claim. You've built your empire on intimidation, not law. Jason stood a little taller beside me. He wasn't just watching anymore, he was part of it. The board fell silent, faces pale. The crowd was no longer theirs. They had tried to bury me under paper, but now the spotlight was turning. And the deeper we dug, the more their empire of rules began to look like a house built on sand. The neighborhood was never quiet after that meeting. The sound wasn't loud, no shouting, no riots. It was whispers. Phone calls, blinds shifting, text messages flying like birds in the sky. The HOA board had ruled with silence and intimidation for years, but now silence was no longer on their side. Neighbors crossed the street differently. Some approached me with cautious smiles, asking if what I said was really true. Others avoided eye contact, clutching their grocery bags like truth itself might burn them. The air smelled like freshly cut grass, but underneath it, you could taste the fear of a kingdom cracking. Jason noticed it too. Dad, he said one afternoon, half the neighbors don't mow their lawns the way the rules say anymore. I looked out the window. He was right. Lawns were longer, trash bins out of schedule, cars parked overnight in places the HOA hated. The grip was slipping. People were testing the leash, realizing it was never attached in the first place, but power never falls quietly. It claws on the way down. Mrs. Hargrove doubled her efforts. Flyers appeared in mailboxes, thick with bold red text. Walker is lying, don't be deceived. HOA rules protect our community. Without us, property values will collapse. The next morning, a new email blast went out, claiming my deeds were fabricated, that my family had no legal standing. It was laughable, but to the board, desperation wasn't embarrassing and it was strategy. Still, cracks were showing. At the grocery store, I overheard Mrs. Green whispering furiously into her phone, "He's got the records. They're real. I don't know what Hargrove's plan is, but if this goes to court, I'm not taking the fall." I didn't need microphones or cameras. Panic broadcasts itself. One evening, Harris stopped by. He didn't wear any tactical gear, just a plain polo shirt, but he still carried the weight of a man who'd seen worse wars than HOA politics. He leaned against my porch rail, watching Jason work on his robot in the driveway. "They're scrambling," Harris said. "That's when they're most dangerous. Desperate people don't fight to win, they fight not to lose." I nodded. "And desperate people cut corners. They'll forge more, twist more, threaten more. I need to be ready." He studied me for a moment, then gave a half smile. "You're already doing what they fear most, standing still, making them chase shadows while you shine daylight." Jason glanced up from his robot, brow furrowed. "So they'll come after us again?" Harris looked him in the eye. "Count on it. But when they do, they'll trip over their own lies. That's how bullies end." Jason nodded, swallowing hard, but I saw it. That spark. He was scared, but he wasn't shrinking. He was learning. The HOA called another emergency meeting 2 days later, only this time the turnout was smaller. Half the neighborhood showed up, but the other half stayed home, tired of theater. Folding chairs lined the Hargrove lawn, but gaps between them told the story. The empire was bleeding members. Mrs. Hargrove stepped to the podium with rehearsed authority, but her pearls didn't shine as bright under the setting sun. "Residents," she began, "we cannot allow misinformation to destroy our community. Mr. Walker's claims are baseless. The board stands united." "No, we don't," a voice cut in. All heads turned. It was Mr. Lawson, the treasurer. He stood, sweat on his brow, shaking his head. "I've seen the records. He's telling the truth. The land deeds are valid. We've been overstepping." The crowd gasped. Mrs. Hargrove froze. For years, Lawson had been her right hand, her numbers man, her shield. His defection was a crack she couldn't patch. "You're out of line," Hargrove hissed. "No," Lawson said, voice shaking but growing stronger. "I'm out of patience. If this goes to court, we'll be ruined." "I won't be dragged down for your pride," murmurs surged through the neighbors. Some nodded, whispering that they'd suspected the same. Others looked terrified, as if their safe world was collapsing brick by brick. Jason leaned close to me, whispering, "Dad, it's happening. They're breaking." I kept my eyes on Hargrove. Leaders fall hardest when they can't admit they've lost. She slammed her hand against the podium. "This is slander, lies. He's manipulating all of you." I stepped forward, holding up my folder once more. "No lies, just records. And if you doubt them, we can take them to the courthouse tomorrow." Phones came out again, recording. Light flashed in the growing dusk. Every word was being captured, archived, shared beyond this street. Mrs. Green shifted uncomfortably. Mr. Patel raised his hand timidly. "If this is true," he asked, "then what happens to us? To our homes?" "Nothing," I said firmly. "Your homes are yours. Your lives are yours. The only thing that changes is the board loses the right to bully you with fake power." Relief washed over some faces. Others looked betrayed. The board's authority had been their shield too, and losing it meant facing a new uncertain world. Hargrove's eyes burned into me. For a moment, she looked less like a leader and more like a cornered animal. "This isn't over," she spat. "You think you can strip me of my authority? I built this community. I made these rules. Without me, this place will rot." I met her gaze calmly. "No, without you, this place will finally breathe." The crowd erupted, some clapping, some shouting, some storming away. The board scattered, their unity shattered. The meeting ended not with applause, but with neighbors arguing in the street. The spell of fear broken at last. That night, Jason sat with me on the porch, robot humming quietly between us. "Dad, do you think she'll quit?" I looked out across the darkened neighborhood. Porch lights glowed, but the board's house sat dark, curtains drawn. "No," I said quietly. "People like her don't quit, they scheme. And the next scheme will be worse." Jason nodded, his jaw tightening. "Then we'll be ready." When silence finally fell that night, one truth lingered in the air. The HOA's crown was cracking, but desperate queens don't surrender. They go down swinging. For 3 days, the neighborhood held its breath. The board was silent, no flyers, no emails, no threats. To the untrained eye, it might have looked like surrender, but silence is never surrender in politics, and it's plotting. I knew it. Harris knew it. Even Jason sensed it, tinkering nervously with his robot while peeking at the window every few minutes. "They're too quiet," he muttered. "It feels like a trap." He wasn't wrong. On the 4th morning, a courier arrived again. Same envelope, same embossed seal, but heavier this time, the kind of weight only legal tricks can carry. Notice of Lion, it read in bold stamped letters. My name in sharp print, their signatures beneath. According to them, my property, and therefore my home, was no longer mine. They had secured a lien for unpaid fines. If I didn't comply, foreclosure proceedings would begin immediately. Jason's face went pale as he read over my shoulder. "Dad, they're trying to take the house." Harris picked up the paper, studied it like a map, then he shook his head slowly. "This isn't just intimidation anymore. This is fraud. The county never issued this. Look at the signature line. Wrong clerk. Wrong date." Ramirez, standing in the doorway, crossed his arms. They just crossed a line they can't uncross. That night, the board called yet another emergency meeting. They wanted the whole neighborhood present for their big reveal. Their arrogance was a sickness. They actually thought people would celebrate this. Lean neighbors gathered, murmuring anxiously, folding chairs again, porch lights casting long shadows across Mrs. Hargrove's lawn. The board sat at the front, stiff as soldiers preparing for parade. Mrs. Hargrove stood tall, eyes blazing. "Residents," she began, "the time has come to enforce accountability. Mr. Walker has failed to comply with our community rules. As of today, his property is under lien. His arrogance has consequences. Justice is being served." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Some neighbors looked horrified, others relieved, as if finally the board had put me in my place. I stepped forward calmly, Jason clutching the folder beside me. Harrison Ramirez flanked us, silent but solid. "Interesting claim," I said, holding up their forged document. "But there's a problem. It's fake." The crowd erupted again. Mrs. Green stammered, "Fake? How dare you?" "Look closely," I interrupted, holding the paper so everyone could see under the floodlight. "The clerk's name is wrong. The county seal is misaligned. The date they used is a holiday. The office was closed. This isn't a lien. This is forgery." Phones flashed as neighbors zoomed in, snapping photos. Whispers grew louder. Hargrove's face twisted. "Lies! You're twisting facts to cover your own failure." Jason opened his laptop, connecting it to a portable projector. The screen lit up with county records I'd pulled earlier that day. "Not lies," he said, his voice steadier than I'd ever heard it. "Proof." The projector showed real county filings side by side with the forged lien. The differences glared under the light. Mismatched fonts, wrong signatures, seals in the wrong place. Even a child could see it. A neighbor in the front row gasped, "She forged it." Another muttered, "That's a crime." The crowd's tide was shifting. Fear was turning into anger. The flashing of blue and red interrupted the murmurs. 2 patrol cars pulled up, officers stepping out, the same ones from weeks ago. They approached slowly, scanning the scene, already sensing the weight of it. I handed them the document. "Chain of custody starts now. This is fraudulent. I want it entered into evidence." The senior officer studied it, then looked directly at Hargrove. "Ma'am, this signature doesn't match our records. Where did this come from?" She sputtered, glancing at her board members for backup. They looked away, pale, suddenly unwilling to share the stage. It's a clerical error," she stammered. We had authority." "Forgery is not a clerical error." The officer cut in firmly. He turned to his partner. "Bag it." The younger officer pulled out an evidence sleeve, sliding the document inside. The neighborhood watched in stunned silence. Jason whispered, "They're really doing it." Hargrove's mask cracked. Her pearls trembled against her neck as her voice rose. "You can't do this to me. I built this community. I am this community." The senior officer stepped closer. "Ma'am, you need to come with us." Neighbors gasped as he gently but firmly took her by the arm. She pulled back, wild-eyed, scanning the crowd for support. But none came. Phones recorded, eyes judged, silence condemned. For years she had ruled with fear. Tonight fear had abandoned her. As the patrol car door shut with a hollow thunk, the neighborhood exhaled. Some clapped hesitantly. Others shook their heads, whispering about what they'd just witnessed. The board was shattered. Their queen was gone. Jason looked at me, eyes wide. "Dad, did we just win?" I put a hand on his shoulder, watching the patrol car disappear into the night. "No," I said softly. "We just proved daylight burns brightest when someone tries to cover it up." The HOA's last card had been played and lost, but the true ending wasn't in the arrest. It was in what the neighborhood would choose to become when fear was finally gone. The neighborhood didn't wake up to trumpets or banners the next morning. It woke up to sprinklers, dogs tugging leashes, garage doors humming open. The quiet sounds of a place relearning how to breathe. The patrol cars were gone. The folding chairs had been folded for the last time. On Mrs. Hargrove's lawn, dew clung to the patch where the podium had stood, a damp rectangle like a ghost of authority. By noon, a sign planter staked a post into her yard. The red placard tilted in the breeze, "For sale." People slowed their cars as they drove past, not out of cruelty, but curiosity, as if the street were checking its own pulse. Jason watched from the porch, his robot in his lap. For weeks he had measured tension in the air the way his sensors measured distance. Now he was studying something else, quiet. He nudged the switch. Servos whirred. The little arm traced a smooth arc, stopped an inch shy of the porch rail. He smiled, satisfied. "Obstacle avoidance still works," he said. "Good," I replied. "We just cleared a big one." Across the street, Mr. Patel waved and crossed over with his grandson. "If Jason has time," he asked, "would he show Arjun how to program that little thing? He can't stop talking about it." Jason sat up straighter, surprised and pleased. "Yeah," he said. "Grab a chair." Within an hour, 2 more kids joined. They clustered around the laptop, oohing when the arm obeyed, cheering when it didn't, and they had to fix it. Harris stopped by, leaned on the porch rail and said nothing for a while, just watched a cul-de-sac turn into a classroom. He glanced at me. "This is what wins," he murmured. "Not the paper, not the podiums. Saturdays like this," I nodded. "We'll still have meetings," I said. "Sure," he replied, amused, "but maybe now they'll be about barbecues and block parties instead of bylaws." The old board tried one last email that afternoon. A bland, carefully lawyered statement about temporary leadership transition and respect for due process. It landed with a thud. Members resigned quietly over the next 48 hours. Those who stayed asked for something that had gone missing long before fines and flyers. Trust. A week later, we gathered on the green for a real community meeting. No dais, no microphone, just a circle of lawn chairs under the soft shade of maples. Someone set a cooler in the middle. Someone else passed around a clipboard, but this time it wasn't for violations. It was for volunteers. Mr. Lawson, the treasurer who'd broken ranks, cleared his throat. "We need to decide what this group is for," he said. "What we want to be." Silence held for a second, then Mr. Chen spoke. "I'd like us to help each other, not police each other." Murmurs of agreement. A mom from the end of the block lifted her hand. "Could we start with something simple? A shared tool shed? I'm tired of borrowing hammers on Facebook." Laughter. "Not the mean kind. The kind that loosens shoulders," Jason whispered to me. "Can I propose something?" "Go," I said. He stood, a little awkward, then steadied. "I want to host a Saturday Makers Club here. We'll teach basic robotics and coding. We'll build stuff that helps, like mail alarms for seniors or garden moisture sensors so lawns actually need less water." He looked around, nervous. If people want it, they did. Hands went up. "I'll bring snacks. I can print flyers. My niece would love this. Can my dad come? He's retired, but he used to do wiring." Harris leaned in and spoke just loudly enough for the circle. "I can come by twice a month. Teach planning, safety, how to hold a line without making a fist." He glanced at Jason. "And how to measure power by what it doesn't do." We voted, not on fines or punishments, but on a new charter. No punitive fees, no weaponized notices. Any rule had to answer a simple test. Does it help a neighbor? If not, it didn't survive the circle. 3 practical things survived. First, a community calendar for real issues. Street repairs, tree trimming, snow shoveling teams. Second, a small optional fund for shared improvements overseen by rotating volunteers. Third, conflict mediation. 2 neighbors and 1 neutral person on a porch, talking like adults before anything escalated past a conversation. When the circle broke up, the breeze carried the smell of cut grass and charcoal. Someone hooked a speaker to a playlist that hadn't been cleared by a committee. Kids chalked the sidewalk. A golden retriever stole a hot dog and was forgiven. That evening, I walked the block with Jason. He pointed out tiny changes only he would notice. A basketball hoop lowered to its rightful height, a lawn left wild at the edges to let the clover bloom. A garden bench moved, not to comply, but to catch evening light. "Do you think it sticks?" he asked. He didn't mean the bench. "It will," I said. "Because we didn't replace one podium with another. We replaced it with people." He thought about that, then grinned. "And robots. Mostly people," I said, but I smiled too. A month later, a small envelope arrived, county clerk across the top. My shoulders tightened until I opened it. Inside was a single note from the deputy clerk, handwritten. "Lien complaint resolved. Forgery referred to prosecutor. Records intact. P.S. My kid loved the Saturday club. Thanks." I taped it inside the old folder with the deeds and put the folder away. Some trophies win themselves. Others you have to protect quietly for decades, until someone tries to pretend they own what they were only borrowing. Word of what happened in Maple Grove traveled. A local reporter wrote a piece about a neighborhood that learned to breathe. Realtors worried it would hurt values. 2 months later, sales data made them stop worrying. Turns out buyers like streets with fewer fines and more lemonade. Mrs. Hargrove didn't come back. Her house sold to a young couple with a toddler who drew flowers on the driveway with blue chalk. No one told them the chalk had to match a palette. The flowers were blue because the toddler liked blue. That was the only reason, and it was enough. On the Saturday after they moved in, Jason set up folding tables for the Makers Club. Harris arrived with a box of safety glasses and a stack of legal pads. Ramirez rolled in with a cooler of ice pops. The kids cheered louder for the ice pops than the robotics. No one took it personally. Jason opened the session by holding up his first robot, the one that had learned obstacle avoidance on our porch. "We built this to not bump into things," he told the kids. "Turns out that's a good rule for people too." They laughed. Then they learned. Then they built. A small alarm for Mr. Chen's back gate. It had a habit of drifting open. A moisture sensor for Mrs. Green's tomatoes. She came quietly and no one made her explain. A motion-activated light for Mr. Patel's walkway. Arjun soldered half the joints and beamed the whole time. As the sun slid down, Harris tapped his notepad and looked at Jason. Inventory, he said, like old times. Jason ticked it off, counting on his fingers. Patience, listening, proof, calm. Harris raised an eyebrow. And? Neighbors, Jason finished. The kind who show up. Harris nodded. That's most of it. The rest is time. We packed the tables, coiled the cords, dumped the leftover ice into the grass where it hissed like a small summer storm. The street glowed gold. You could hear a lawnmower far away, the soft thump of a basketball, someone singing along to a song they didn't care if anyone liked. Before we went inside, Jason lingered. Dad, you know what the best part is? What? We didn't win by crushing them, he said. We won by removing the reason anyone thought they needed them. I looked at the circle of porches, at kids turning sensors into fireflies, at grown-ups who'd chosen to be neighbors instead of critics. Yeah, I said, that's the kind of win that lasts. He slipped his arm through mine as we climbed the steps. The porch light clicked on. It did not require a permit. Inside, the old folder went back on its shelf not as a weapon but as a reminder. Ownership is paperwork, community is practice, and daylight, the kind you can feel on your forearms while a robot arm stops exactly an inch from the rail, is the only judge that mattered here. Out on the street, the for sale sign had been replaced by a welcome mat 2 doors down. No one voted on its font. No one measured its corners. It lay slightly crooked and absolutely perfect. If this story hit home, subscribe for more cinematic neighborhood tales, where the real plot twist is always people choosing each other over fear.